Hey guys, welcome back to Carson Means. We have NFL Week 2 Power Rankings Part 1. This is going to be ranking the bottom 16 teams. Part 2 should be popping up on the top of your screen sometime in this video. That is going to be ranking the top 16 teams, so you can go ahead and watch that too. It's just if I did it all in one video, it'd be way too long, and I don't want to force that on you guys. So let's go ahead and get started. And so I kind of changed up here. I used to, in my last power rankings, I had maybe next season, but that made it seem like a prediction. So I put they're having a pretty bad season because so far it seems like they're having a pretty bad season, but any team on this list could still turn their season around. 32, which is the Jets, could still end up winning the Super Bowl technically. So I don't want to put maybe next year. I want to put, it's pretty terrible. I mean, let's just go ahead and get into it. The Jets, they pretty much got smothered by the Bills. I mean, the Bills just, they didn't have any response for Josh Allen. He was able to just completely demolish them last week. And, I mean, they got a couple touchdowns late. I mean, I don't even know if I want to count the Jamison Crowder one because now he's out. Jamison Crowder is injured. And that's just no good. So now they're relying on Brashad Perriman. Braxton Berrios is the one that's going to be replacing Jamison Crowder. So they might be even worse this game. They'd probably be 31st if Jamison Crowder didn't get hurt because he had that great play last week. That was really might be the highlight of their whole game. And now he's injured, so it's pretty bad. In 31, we have the Dolphins. They dropped down a lot, actually. Now it's week 1, you're going to see more teams moving around a lot as we see how they're actually going to play. And then as we get later into the season, you'll see things kind of flatline as not too many teams move around. But the Dolphins, they really, their defense, their defense played better than I expected it to. I know that the Patriots still managed to score 21 points, but I honestly expected the Patriots to score more than 21 points. And their offense played really well. I know it was a lot of running. So the Dolphins, their defense played pretty good, I think, but that offense just was terrible. Ryan Fitzpatrick, no touchdowns and 3 interceptions. It was terrible. I mean, if you're a Dolphins fan, I would be wanting Tagovailoa in there more and more each week. Hopefully they don't drop down anymore. Maybe they can surprise me. Maybe Fitzmagic comes out and, wins this next game, but probably not. I think they're playing the Bills. In 30th, we have the Lions, and I know that a lot of people still think that they're probably going to make the playoffs, and they could. But really, you saw it last week. They got cocky. They were up 17, and they just started running the ball heavily. They allowed Mitch Trubisky to score 3 touchdowns there at the end. And really, I mean, that's no good. If they can play the whole game, maybe they have a possibility of winning. But they're playing the Packers this week, which doesn't bode well for them. So I just stuck them at 30. Oh, by the way, these were made before the Thursday night game. So where the Browns are and where the Bengals are probably would have changed if Thursday night if I had ranked these after Thursday night. I'm recording these the day they're being posted. So look, Browns at 29th, they would probably be higher, but I'm just going to talk about week 1. And then next week when I do my week 3 power rankings, I will talk about how they did in the Thursday night game. I also have a full video on it. You can check it out. But the Browns, they completely got beat up by the Ravens. I know it's the Ravens, but they still look terrible. So while we know that they played pretty well against the Bengals, that will definitely bump them up in next week. What I had to go off of making these is the fact that they did play absolutely terribly against the Ravens. They only scored 6 points with Nick Chubb, and honestly, they just completely looked terrible. All right. Next up, we have the Giants, who stay at 28th. They kind of played how I thought they would. Their offense did impress me a bit. They managed to score more points than I thought they would against a really good Steelers defense. So I was a bit impressed. They just ended up not moving around based on all the people moving around around them. And their defense, the defense played how I thought it would. They led up 26 points and they lost, but they did manage to score 16 points against a good Steelers defense. So they get to stick at 28th, but really it's not too good for the Giants. Moving on to 27th, we have the Panthers. Their offense, it really didn't play too well. I know Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion, he had a lot of yards, but he didn't play as well as I thought they would. They weren't relying on him as heavily as I thought they should be. Terry Bridgewater, we saw him. He didn't look like he did last year. He was throwing a lot. He was throwing balls way above receivers. He was being pretty terrible. So Teddy Bridgewater really disappointed me in this game, and their defense didn't play very well. I mean, allowed 34 points to the Raiders. Not to mention, I was talking about how their offense disappointed me while they're playing against the Raiders defense, which isn't the best. So really, 27th is the place I'm going to put the Panthers. They definitely could move up as Teddy Bridgewater gets into the season. I don't know. I mean, last time he started was probably like 3 or 4 years ago when he actually started week 1. So it'll probably take a bit for him to get used to it in this new system, and we'll see what happens. Next up, we have the Bears, who actually moved up a lot. That I know that they played terribly in the first 3 quarters, but I did not know that I didn't know they had it in them to play how they did in the third quarter. I mean, Mitch Trubisky really, really surprised me in that third quarter with 3 touchdown passes. They scored 21 points, and they came back and they beat the Lions. So right now, if they play like they did in the fourth quarter in all 3, if they play in all 4 quarters like they did in the fourth quarter of this last game, they have a good chance. They could beat any team, really. That is a very. I mean, if they that would mean the Bears are very, very good. I don't know how many ways I could say this, but so right now I'm looking, and they played really well for 1 quarter or something, and okay, they have that in them. I did not know that. That shows that they do have talent, and they can do it. Maybe they'll look and they see, okay, what did we do in the fourth quarter that we can bring over into new games? And that's why I bumped them up to 26th, because really I think that they could use this game to, learn what they should be doing and get better from it. And so they move up to 26th, which is still pretty bad, but it is better than 31st, is where I had them last year. Now, moving up, we have the Chargers, who dropped down 3, even though they got the win. It's just because they didn't play well against the Bengals, who, really, Joe Burrow, he had a pretty good outing, but when you're going up and you have the first game of a rookie and you manage to barely win based off of a missed field goal, they just didn't impress me. And, Tyrod Taylor didn't look like he had in years past, and so they got dropped down. Of course, it's only from 22nd to 25th. But really, they haven't been impressing me. They've had a pretty bad season so far. At least it's week 1. And we'll see if they can get it better. Now, this next one is, they could be doing better. I'm only going to explain these in this video, but whatever. They could be doing better. Like, they're not doing terrible like the teams below them. Maybe 24, 22 are. But definitely not most of these guys. They're just having like a mess season. They're probably not going to go anywhere if they play. They're not looking very good, but they're not looking very bad. In 24th, we have the Broncos. They did lose to the Titans. And that, the Titans are playing really sloppily, and the Broncos, really, I just wasn't impressed. They really need to run the ball a lot. Philip Lindsay injured. They're going to be relying on Melvin Gordon, and I just think 24th is a place they can go. They did play pretty well against the Titans, but they did still lose. And it's going to take a bit for Drew Lock to get used to things. They're going to now that Philip Lindsay is injured, especially, they're really going to have to start letting him throw more. And they're going to rely on Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. And so once Drew Lock gets into things and he develops, and Jerry Jeudy also, the rookie wide receiver, gets into things and develop, this is when they will start to move up. And hopefully by the next year, they will be a pretty good team. But right now, I do not think that they are a top 20 team. Moving on 23, we have Washington. They really surprised me. I've been talking about how their defense is really good. A lot of people have, and they just showed it. 8 sacks in this game. Ryan Kerrigan was your NFC Defensive Player of the Week. And they looked amazing. That offense, what they basically did is they heavily relied on their defense, and now you have one of the best I'm kind of excited for this next game because you have one of the best D-lines going up against Kyler Murray, which should be a pretty interesting matchup. Washington, they did better than I thought they would, and then they bumped up to 23. They're above a lot of teams that a lot of people will probably have above them. Moving up to 22, we have the Bengals again. This is before the Thursday night game. I know that they lost, but if it was after the Thursday night game, I would have them above. You'll see that in this next week's power rankings, and for the rest of the power rankings, I won't be explaining all this in the rest of my power rankings, but I figure I'm not gonna do that. So the Bengals, they lost to the Chargers. Their kicker missed a gimme field goal there at the end. But Joe Burrow, he looked good. You can tell this guy's got talent. You can tell that if he continues to play like this, hint, hint, he did Thursday, that he could turn into really their next starter for the next 10 years, because really he looked great. He was making some good throws. I mean, he was getting Tyler Boyd in there. And really, I think, excuse me. Sorry. I thought I needed to sneeze. That's the worst. But the Bengals, they impressed me a bit, but they did still lose, and they only did score 13 points. So I think as Joe Burrow, again, like any rookie quarterback, second-year quarterback, he's going to get better as the season goes on. They are going to start moving up, and eventually I think they will at least be in top 15, but we'll see. In 21st, we have the Eagles, who are dropping down 3 for that loss against Washington. Their offensive line looked terrible. Carson Wentz completely choked there at the end. And I mean, their defense wasn't doing anything to help them either. I mean, Washington was getting the ball inside Eagles territory. I get that, but they weren't stopping them. You saw earlier in the game, Washington was having a 3-and-out after 3-and-out, and then later in the game, Washington was getting like first down after first down, just moving the ball down the field so easily. They did have pretty good red zone defense. They forced a couple field goals there that could have turned into touchdowns. So I was kind of impressed with that, but other than that, the Eagles just looked pretty terrible, and they managed to drop down from 18th. Now we have the Colts, who have fallen pretty far, down to 8. I think that might be the biggest move we've seen so far, but I know that there's a couple that are worse than that. The Colts, I mean, really, I was so high on them. I was like, yes, the Colts are going to be one of the best teams in the league. I was saying, Phillip Rivers, he was pretty good with the Chargers. They've made it to the playoffs every now and then these past couple of years. And now that he's got more weapons, now that he's got, T.Y. Hilton, Paris Campbell, he's got all these weapons to work with that I thought that he would be great. But then he comes out there and he plays terribly against the Jaguars defense. And their defense didn't, I mean, they let Gardner Minshew complete 19 out of his 20 passes and 3 touchdowns for no interceptions. Really, I mean, they just handed the win over to the Jaguars. And I mean, they're really going to have to, this could be kind of like a situation where, Phillip Rivers, he has a pretty good career with the Chargers. Probably he has like a pretty good chance of being a Hall of Famer maybe. And then he moves over to the Colts, and eventually everyone forgets about him being on the Colts ever. Maybe he plays for 2 years, if he plays like this. But if he gets things back together and they make the playoffs, anything could happen. Moving on to 19, we have the Falcons, and this is where I think maybe 19 or 18. These is where you're going to start getting the big movers. The rest of this is pretty much like the moving up by 1. The Falcons, I was really, really low on them. I was talking about how I thought that they were one of the worst teams. I did not think they had much talent. And then they go out there, and Matt Ryan throws for 150 yards. They have 3 wide receivers, or three receivers with over 100 yards. Todd Gurley has a pretty good game. And they just completely impressed me, really, a lot. So, I had to move them by 10. They're not the 29th team. I think they're going to have to show me some more. If they can consistently play like they did last Sunday, they will definitely be really high up on my list. And on top of this, they were playing against a pretty good Seahawks defense. Even more importantly, they were playing against, in my opinion, one of the best secondaries in the league, and they dropped 450 passing yards on them. So that really, really impresses me. And we'll see if they can keep it up or if it was just a week 1 fluke. We see a lot of this. We see a lot of teams that end up going 3-13, 4-12, win really well, do really well in week 1, or win, and then end up completely collapsing. And we see a lot of teams that go, 10-6, 12-4, that lose their first couple of games. So anything could happen. But right now, the Falcons are really impressing me. And if they play the same way in week 2, and I think they would have an easy time beating the Cowboys if they do, they will definitely move up a lot. Maybe not 10, but probably like 5 or something. We'll see. 18 Jaguars. Yep, this is the biggest mover of the day. The Jaguars, I had them at 32, and then they come out, and Gardner Minshew, like I said with the Colts, he completes 19 of his 20 passes. He throws for 3 touchdowns and no interceptions, and he plays really, really well. Rookie running back James Robinson kind of, shows like everyone thought, oh, you got rid of Leonard Fournette, you're trying to tank, your running game's going to be nonsense, and by everyone, I mean me. I was saying those exact things, and then James Robinson comes out here and has a monster game to add to that passing game, and really their offense insanely impressed me. Their defense, not so much. I mean, I just talked about how the Colts offense was really pretty bad, and then they still allowed 20 points. So it's a mixed bag, but I do think that they deserve to move up 14 and be in the 18th spot. Now, the last team that we are going to be talking about in this video, we have the Steelers, who they managed to beat the Giants, which isn't too much of a feat. But one of the reasons they didn't move up too much is because Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger said that after the game, he felt like he had just been hit by a car after not playing for a year. He felt like, he was completely in pain, and that is not very good. Now, they played pretty well. I mean, Big Ben took a bit to get going, but towards the second half, he was doing really, really well. Juju Smith-Schuster, what a game, 2 touchdowns, all kinds of yards. He was insane in this game. And, I mean, we'll see. I mean, hopefully Big Ben doesn't get injured. So, that's that. I will see you guys. Oh, wait, this still says part 1. I'll change that. But, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really love making these. I hope you watch football tomorrow. Yeah. In my description, I have my Twitter, my Instagram. I would love it if you wouldn't follow those. I'm not very active on either, but, I still do it every now and then, so I'd like it if you did it. A lot of times if I'm watching a Washington game, I'll just post some random thing. Like last week, I was like, run the ball, and people were really confused on why I just randomly tweeted, run the ball. So, I mean, if you're into kind of football stuff or just alerts from my channel every now and then you should go follow those. My Instagram is mainly just stuff about my life, which is why I rarely post, but still. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, subscribe. We do these every week along with predictions. And we do reactions after every primetime game. Well, not Sunday night, and we do a weekly recap that includes Sunday night. I do a special. I'm going to start doing a special video reacting to the Washington game, and then later in the week preparing you for the Washington game, because I am a Washington football team fan. So, yeah, if you're gonna